NFT stands for newfangled technology, as we all know. And that's what the subject of this podcast series is going to be. What's up? Fungible? So we're just, making up words now? Hey, Shaka Bras. Welcome to the Fireside. My name is Jake. Always a pleasure to be here with you. I appreciate you tuning in. This is a brand new series that I'm pretty excited about. We have all for the last several years been hearing a lot about Bitcoin, I think was the first term that we heard, and cryptocurrencies in general, and blockchain technologies and metaverse, and now the most recent one that we're hearing so much about, particularly in the art world, is NFT, non-fungible token. But before we dive into the series, I want to tell a quick story. A few years ago, I would say maybe 2017, 2018, I was listening to a podcast, a technology podcast, and there was a guy named Eric something that was a guest on the podcast who had a company called Vatom, V-A-T-O-M. It was short for virtual atoms. And so he gave this kind of case study of what his business was doing. And the example that he gave was, you are at an event, a festival, something, and you pass the Samuel Adams tent or Budweiser tent, and they have this little interactive image on their phone that they can shoot to your phone, and it's a bottle of beer. So it's a Samuel Adams bottle of beer, and you can shake it up and you can, turn it and do whatever, and it moves and it interacts. It may warm up or something like that. And so maybe you have to go to another booth and get a little mini fridge or get a koozie or something like that so that you can cool it back down. So you kind of gamify this little image, this little interactive image that's on your phone. Now, then you can go to, say, a restaurant or a bar and take this little image on your phone and shoot it to the bartender and exchange it for an actual beer, right? So it's kind of like a little fun digital coupon for a free beer. But it's more than that. You could also, if you're not a beer drinker, maybe you could trade it or sell it on a third-party marketplace. So maybe you don't drink beer, but you do drink Coca-Cola. So you could trade it to your friend for a Coca-Cola interactive image. Or what really makes this interesting is maybe 99 out of 100 of these little images are worth a bottle of beer, but the 100th one, when you shoot that over to the bartender, it's actually worth a case of beer, or maybe it's worth a year's supply of beer, or a trip to the Samuel Adams brewery where you could stay for a weekend, and they put you up in a hotel or something like that. So you gamify it where you don't really know what the value of this thing is, and it was called a Vatom, a virtual atom. Just a few months ago, I realized that is an NFT. It was just kind of the first version of that. And we basically just gave it a dumber name. So fast forward back to today, I'm scrolling through Instagram, seeing all of these artists doing NFT drops, and I realize that some of these guys are my friends. So I reach out to them to see if they'd be willing to participate in a series on NFTs, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and how it's all related, and just share their experience on what the technology is, how they are putting it to use, kind of some case studies on what it was like to go through their first NFT drop, how they did it, how they buy NFTs, or how I might buy NFTs, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go into all of that throughout this series. In this first episode, we're just going to kind of get our feet wet. We're going to define in layman's terms, hopefully, what these NFTs actually are, what their potentials are, and a little bit of how these artists think that they may be used in the art world sort of going forward. So without any further babbling, let's jump into this episode, and hope you enjoy it.
I mean, the first thing I ever heard about was Bitcoin, like most people. And so then I started to look into cryptocurrency, and then what powers cryptocurrency is blockchain technology. So then you kind of have to dig into that in order to understand each element of what you're looking at. And then NFTs are really only more recent, the past like few years. But so from Bitcoin, like everyone, I didn't get it at first. I was like, okay, this is weird. It's just some other way to pay for stuff. Like dollars work fine. And then once I understood the underlying technology and the premise, the whole like white paper behind why Bitcoin was created, I had an epiphany moment. I had that like typical aha moment where I was like, oh my God, this could potentially be revolutionary actually for the way human beings transact with each other.
With the whole crypto thing, that I got into back in early 2012, before everything exploded. But the NFT space, I really didn't. I kind of about 3 months. I've seen it coming about over the last year and looked into it and stuff. But I was so involved in the crypto space, just on the investment side of it, that I was like, all right, I don't have the energy to start researching something completely new. I don't know how it works.
Blockchain is essentially the technology that allows for secure and decentralized records of transactions without needing a third party. Decentralizing being a big buzzword here, and without needing a third party being like really the big kicker here on what makes a blockchain technology a blockchain. So this makes it pretty much difficult and impossible to change any data in the blockchain. You can think of a blockchain like just a long ledger of things that happen that's public and that everyone can see. And because everyone can see and technically everyone kind of owns a bit of it, that's what makes it impossible to change without it being validated on another like node, essentially.
I kind of related to Internet 2.0 in a sense. And that's always the best way I could explain it. I remember years ago, the 80s, 90s, when everybody had dial-up and all of that, nobody understood the internet, nobody understood any of that. And we look back and everybody wished they invested in the internet or got in early and did all of that. And so I understood, as I was getting into crypto and started researching all of that more and more, I realized that's the wave of the future as far as looking at it. It's bigger than the internet in a sense because it involves so many other things, whether it's the economy, just currency, like everything, the internet, whether it's mortgages on homes, like there's just so much moving parts to that whole thing. So I understood, in a sense, it was as big as the internet was back in the 80s and 90s.
So then when it comes to NFTs, meaning non-fungible token, the opposite of so like a Bitcoin would be a fungible token, is that right? Like, because there's nothing that separates one Bitcoin from another, nothing that makes one distinct from another. What makes it non-fungible is that it is distinct from another unit. Okay. Yeah. So how the NFT relates to the blockchain, it is a unit, an entry in that ledger on the blockchain, but it is unique in what way?
Well, so NFTs came, from the way I understand them, came to be because of blockchain technology enables NFTs. Because the nature of what blockchain is, it's a way of like permanently and publicly recording every transaction that happens. So it's trustless. Like there's no middlemen and there's no trust involved because it's publicly and permanently recorded. And that data that's recorded is shared among every single computer running that network or running that blockchain. So there's a sense of permanence and a sense of uniqueness that enabled NFT technology to even be a thing in the first place. So I think NFTs, it's basically like a little cookie of data, and that individual, clump or cookie of data is unique and different from every single other possible set of data or little cookie of data. So it's basically like a digital collectible in a way. The same way people might hunt for like the rarest Beanie Baby, and there's only like one or two of those that were ever made in a Beanie Baby factory. It's the same concept just applied to digital data.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that really interests me about the NFT stuff is it's essentially going to get rid of the Library of Congress. Back in the day, you would send in like images to the Library of Congress, and then they would basically say, okay, these are copyrighted. At this point, we don't even need that anymore. You can make an NFT of your artwork, and that's basically proof that that's your artwork. So I assume that down the road, we will just be creating NFTs of our artwork just as proof of the fact that we own it. And of course, if you wanted to sell it past that point or lease it out or whatever, or license it, then obviously you can do that. But just being able to copyright your work is pretty amazing.
I had a buddy of mine who was a great client and a good friend of mine, and he had messaged me and said, hey, do you ever think about doing NFTs? And I was like, I looked into it, but I have no idea. I'm so busy and all of that. Maybe we could jump on a call and you can explain it to me. And so I got on a call with him just short of 3 months ago. And he's a computer programmer, software engineer, all of that. So he really understands the tech space, the smart contracts, the coding, all of that. So he started to explain it. And I was like, okay. So we talk about an hour. He explains everything to me. And then I was like, so you kind of mean like this? And he's like, no. I was like, okay, explain it to me again. We went through and I was like, okay, well, what if I did something like this? And he's like, no. And so after about 3 or 4 of those, I finally, it clicked. And I was like, all right, I kind of get it now.
Because it's completely decentralized. It takes power away from central institutions, which most of us don't trust anymore or just downright don't like anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's peer-to-peer, it's decentralized, it's more or less grassroots from the ground up, at least in its original vision and scope. And so that's also what blockchain technology is. It's basically a way of running the internet where it's decentralized among all of us, rather than coming through a centralized server like Amazon Web Services or like Google Analytics. It bypasses huge, powerful data collecting middlemen, and just makes it peer-to-peer, like anyone running a node or running a GPU or a CPU can participate in it.
What I think is going to happen down the road is all these places that share images are going to essentially require those images to be NFTs and show ownership before you put them out. So like you were saying, we kind of lost ownership of our artwork in any digital media, or I'd say any digital media, but any digital visual media. Like, you think about it like this, like if you created a meme, right? And I shared this meme on my Instagram and people laugh at it and think it's funny, then they start following me because I have a bigger platform than you. And then all of a sudden my digital currency goes up because of something you created. And I just screenshotted it and threw it up on my Instagram. So I think what's going to end up happening in the future is when you create an image, whatever it is, there's going to be a verification process across the board. You'll be able to, of course, I assume what they'll do is they'll make it so you can, of course, make it open where anybody can share it, or you can charge a small fee. Maybe it's a penny every time someone shares your meme, or you can sell it to someone, maybe you create a meme and someone's like, dude, I want that meme. We'll give you $5,000 for it. You sell the meme to them and then they can use it on their platform. But the cool thing is like, it almost gives the power back to the artist, because when you create a piece of artwork, these other platforms aren't able to build off of your back without your permission or without paying you on some sort of level.
There's that concept of owning a fractional share of physical goods, such as, high-end cars or, collectibles and things like that. I know the NFT space is not moving into that direction aggressively. That's not the modern trend, but it is utilizing the concept of an NFT to own, fractionalized shares of physical objects, which what makes the idea of NFT very interesting is because while right now people mostly see it as, pictures of monkeys and things that you right click and save. So people think the idea of NFTs are quite ridiculous, but this is kind of like the early phases of the .com boom where, everyone's like throwing up those like really, terrible looking blog pages and they're playing with like, HTML, making like really funny on like myspace.com. But once you start to become deeper and deeper in this world and we start to understand what the technology is and what we could really do with it, it's going to start to become more refined. And just like you mentioned, taking fractionalized shares of the Mona Lisa, or, tying these, the idea of you own a physical good or physical asset, or let's say you purchase a new car, like a new Lamborghini, like a very high-end sports car, and they give you this, badge of honor via NFT. So wherever you go in the digital space, you always have that badge. So for some reason, if you want to flex that badge and say, hey, I'm a Lamborghini owner, but I'm not driving right now, but you can see my badge is validated on, their profile or, their wallet, or their profile in the metaverse, essentially, that, they're tied to this. So I think that's what makes it even crazier as we move forward. And even when we had that metaverse discussion, because it's very new.
The current internet is set up for massive data collecting, huge behemoth corporations to just like get their hands on every piece of data, every piece of content, and claim it as theirs, and then just sort of like rent it back to you, basically. And so if you take them out of the picture and you as an artist or creator sell or engage directly with your audience by selling them an NFT on an open source platform where anyone can go sell an NFT to anyone. You're giving that data, that experience, that engagement directly to your audience or your fan base. And so it's basically taking power out of this giant like data collecting beast that is just trying to like sell it back to you, basically. They collect everything they know about you based on your activity and who you say you are, and then just sell it back to you. So you can actually empower yourself as a creator through NFTs and sell that directly to your audience, basically.
Hey, thanks again for joining me for this very first episode of our Tattooing and NFT series. Episode 2 will drop next week. I'm going to start using the term drop from now on. I've never really done that before. If you are not already, make sure to sign up for our mailing list so you'll be notified when that episode goes live. Also, head over to firesidetattoo.com and see what all we have going on there. Thank you guys, as always, for supporting what we do. Thank you to my guests, and we'll see you next week.